The sun was beginning to dip behind the jagged peaks of the Blackwood Range, casting long, honey-colored shadows across the valley. Colton, a man built from grit and wind-burnt leather, reined in his horse at the edge of the timberline. One of his heifers had wandered off, and the tracks led deep into the forbidden stretch, a patch of ancient forest that most locals avoided. As he pushed through a thicket of silver birch, the usual sounds of the wild went quiet. Instead, he heard the soft, melodic hum of a woman's voice. He dismounted, his spurs clinking softly on the moss. Breaking through a final veil of ferns, he froze. There, bathed in a stray beam of golden light, was a woman who looked like she had been birthed by the forest itself. She was breathtaking, her skin glowing like cream against the emerald backdrop, her dark hair cascading down her back in wild, silken waves. She was bathing her feet in a hidden, steaming spring, her laughter light and musical. Colton, a man of few words and a hardened heart, felt the air leave his lungs. He wasn't just looking at a beautiful woman. He was looking at a miracle. "You're a long way from any trail, miss," Colton said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that seemed to startle the very trees. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She simply turned, her eyes, the color of smoked amber, locking onto his. A slow, knowing smile spread across her lips, one that made the blood in Colton's veins run hot. "Maybe I don't want to be found by the trails," she replied, her voice a velvet caress. "Maybe I was waiting for someone who knows how to find the hidden places." Colton stepped closer, the scent of pine and horse giving way to her intoxicating aroma of wild jasmine and warm skin. He was a rancher who dealt in the tangible, earth, cattle, and sky, but this felt like stepping into a dream. He reached out, his calloused, sun-darkened hand hovering near her cheek. "I'm Colton," he managed, his pulse hammering against his ribs. "I know," she whispered, leaning into his touch. "The forest told me a storm was coming. I just didn't know it would have eyes like yours." In that moment, the boundary between the rugged rancher and the mysterious woman of the woods dissolved. Colton, who lived his life by the clock and the seasons, suddenly realized that the only time that mattered was the present. He pulled her up from the water's edge, his arms wrapping around her waist with a protective, primal hunger. As the first stars began to pierce the indigo sky, the rancher forgot his cattle, forgot his chores, and forgot the world outside the treeline. In the heart of the forest, a new kind of fire was starting, one that would bring him back to this spot day after day, regardless of the cost. Gemini said the rancher's secret. Part 2. The morning chores at the Triple R Ranch were usually Colton's meditation. The rhythmic tossing of hay, the steady hiss of the milkers, the dawn light breaking over the corral. But today his mind was 5 miles east, buried in the dense, fog-shrouded timber of the forbidden stretch. Every nerve in his body hummed with the memory of the woman from spring. He didn't even wait for the sun to clear the horizon before he saddled his buckskin and headed out. He told his ranch hands he was checking the north fence line, but the urgency in his gallop said otherwise. When he reached the hidden grove, she was there, sitting on a moss-covered log as if she had never moved. Her name, he discovered, was Elena. She wore a simple, cream-colored dress that clung to her curves, and her feet were bare against the damp earth. "You're early, cowboy," she teased, her amber eyes dancing with a playful light. Colton dismounted, his boots hitting the ground with a heavy thud. He didn't say a word. He walked straight to her, his large, scarred hands framing her face. The contrast was startling. His skin, toughened by years of branding cattle and hauling timber, against the silk-soft heat of her cheeks. "I couldn't sleep," he confessed, his voice dropping to a low, rough vibration. "I kept thinking I imagined you, that the forest was playing tricks on me." Elena stood, pressing her body against his denim-clad chest. The scent of her, sweet jasmine and wild rain, hit him like a physical blow. "I'm very real, Colton, and I've been waiting for the sun to bring you back." He swept her up in one fluid motion, sitting back down on the mossy log with her draped across his lap. The isolation of the forest felt like a sanctuary. Out here, he wasn't the stoic rancher with a legacy to uphold. He was just a man consumed by a woman who felt like magic. He leaned down, his lips brushing against the sensitive skin of her neck, trailing fire wherever he touched. Elena arched her back, her fingers tangling in his thick, dark hair, pulling him closer. The quiet of the woods was broken only by the heavy thud of his heart and the soft, needy gasps escaping her lips. "I have to see you every day," Colton murmured against her skin, his grip on her waist tightening with possessive intensity. "I don't care about the ranch. I don't care about the town. Just this." Elena pulled back just enough to look into his eyes, her expression turning serious, almost haunting. "The forest has a way of keeping what it finds, Colton. Are you sure you're ready to belong to the wild?" For an answer, he captured her mouth in a deep, hungry kiss that tasted of pine and longing. In that moment, the rancher made his choice. He would lead a double life, a man of the earth by day and a lover of the woods by night. But as they lost themselves in each other under the emerald canopy, a snap of a dry branch echoed from a thicket. Colton's head snapped up, his protective instincts flaring. Someone or something was watching. The snap of the branch hung in the humid air like a gunshot. Colton's muscles locked, his hand instinctively dropping to the heavy leather holster at his hip. He stepped in front of Elena, his broad shoulders shielding her from the dense thicket of shadows. The protective instinct wasn't just about his rancher training anymore. It was primal. "Stay behind me," he growled, his eyes scanning the tree-line for the slightest flicker of movement. A low, mocking whistle drifted through the pines. Out from the brush stepped Silas, Colton's lead ranch hand. He was leaning against a birch tree, a jagged piece of hay stuck between his teeth and a smirk that didn't reach his cold eyes. "So this is where the boss disappears to," Silas drawled, his gaze sliding over Colton to linger on Elena with a look that made Colton's blood boil. "The boys back at the Triple R think you're chasing ghosts, Colton, but it looks like you found something a lot more interesting." Colton stepped forward, his boots digging into the soft loam. The air between the two men crackled with a sudden, violent tension. "You're off your land, Silas. Get back to the north fence." "Now." Silas didn't budge. He spat the straw onto the ground. "Folks in town are starting to talk, boss. Saying the Blackwood Range is changing you. They say the forest takes men's minds before it takes their lives. Is she worth the ranch? Because word travels fast when a man stops being a leader and starts being a fool." Before Silas could utter another word, Colton was on him. He grabbed the man by his collar, slamming him against the rough bark of the birch. The sheer strength of a man who spent his life wrestling steers was terrifying. "You tell a soul what you saw here," Colton hissed, his face inches from Silas's, "and you won't have to worry about the ranch. You'll be worrying about how deep I can bury a secret in these woods. Do I make myself clear?" Silas, his smirk replaced by a pale mask of fear, nodded frantically. Colton shoved him away, watching as the hand scrambled back toward the trail and vanished into the fog. The silence that followed was heavy. Colton turned back to Elena, the fire in his eyes softening, replaced by a raw, aching vulnerability. He slumped against a mossy rock, the weight of his double life finally pressing down on him. Elena approached him slowly, her touch as light as a falling leaf on his shoulder. "They won't let us be, Colton. Your world and mine. They're like oil and water. One will always try to drown the other." Colton looked up at her, his jaw set in a line of iron determination. He pulled her into the space between his knees, his hands sliding up her thighs to rest firmly on her hips. The danger hadn't scared him off. It had only anchored him deeper to her. "Let them come," he vowed, his voice a dark, rough promise. "I've spent my life building fences to keep things in. Now, I'll build them to keep the world out." He pulled her down into the clover, the urgency of the confrontation turning into a desperate, feverish need to reclaim what was theirs. Under the canopy of the forbidden stretch, they surrendered to a passion that was as wild and unforgiving as the mountains themselves. For Colton, there was no going back to the ranch. There was only the girl, the woods, and the encroaching darkness. The peace of the forbidden stretch was shattered by the distant, rhythmic baying of hounds. Colton stood at the mouth of a moss-covered overhang, his shirt unbuttoned, his chest heaving. The warning Silas had delivered wasn't just a threat, it was a prophecy. The town elders, fueled by rumors of witchcraft and a rancher losing his mind to the woods, had sent a search party. "They're close," Elena whispered, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. She pressed against his back, her heat the only thing keeping him grounded. Colton turned, his eyes hard as flint. "Let them come. They think they know these woods because they timber the edges. They don't know the heart of it like I do now." He grabbed his heavy canvas coat and wrapped it around her shoulders, the scent of leather and tobacco enveloping her. He didn't just want to hide her. He wanted to claim her in front of the whole world, even if it meant watching the Triple R burn to the ground. As the first torchlight flickered through the dense cedar, Colton stepped out into the clearing. He looked like a titan of the earth, his silhouette blocking the path. A group of men, led by the sheriff and a bruised, bitter Silas, skidded to a halt. The hounds strained at their leashes, whimpering not in aggression, but in a strange, submissive fear. "Colton, step aside," the sheriff commanded, his Winchester leveled but shaking. "That girl, she's lived in these woods since the disappearance 10 years ago. People say she ain't human, Colton. They say she's a snare for men's souls." Colton didn't flinch. He reached back and took Elena's hand, lacing his rough fingers through her delicate ones. "She's the only soul I've ever met that was worth saving, Sheriff. If you want her, you've got to go through me. And I've got enough lead in my belt to make sure none of you see the sunrise." The standoff was suffocating. Silas stepped forward, his face twisted. "Look at him. He's bewitched. Look at his eyes. They aren't the eyes of a rancher anymore." But as Silas reached for his own sidearm, the forest itself seemed to respond. A sudden, violent gust of wind whipped through the clearing, extinguishing half the torches. The ground rumbled, a low growl of shifting earth that sent the horses into a blind panic. In the confusion, Colton swept Elena into his arms and retreated into the thickest veil of mist. They didn't run toward the ranch. They ran toward the high ridge where the cliffs met the sky. They reached the summit just as the moon broke through the clouds. Below them, the torches looked like tiny, insignificant sparks. Colton pulled her into a deep, desperate embrace, his mouth finding hers with a ferocity that claimed her for eternity. From this day on, Colton breathed against her lips, his hands possessive on her waist. "The ranch is a ghost. I'm a man of the mountain now." Elena smiled, her amber eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. She leaned in, her whisper a promise that echoed through the pines. "Then let the mountain show you its secrets, Colton." As the sun began to bleed over the horizon, the search party found only a riderless buckskin horse at the edge of the woods. The rancher and the girl had vanished, leaving behind only a legend that would be whispered in the valley for generations to come. The story of the man who traded a kingdom of cattle for a queen of the wild. The search party had retreated, their torches mere embers in the valley below. High on the obsidian ridge, where the air tasted of ancient ice and cedar resin, Colton and Elena stood at the mouth of a hidden grotto. This wasn't a place for a cattleman. It was a sanctuary of stone and starlight. Colton dropped his heavy belt and holster onto the cave floor, the metallic clatter echoing like a final goodbye to his old life. He turned to Elena, his rugged face illuminated by the silver glow of a high mountain moon. The adrenaline of the hunt had settled into a deep, pulsing heat that radiated between them. "The Triple R is gone," he said, his voice a low, gravelly vibration that sent a thrill through her. "My name, my lands. I gave it all to the wind." Elena stepped into his space, her small hands sliding up his corded forearms, feeling the tremor of her strained power in his muscles. "You didn't give it away, Colton. You traded a cage for a kingdom." He didn't wait for another word. He swept her up, his mouth crashing onto hers with a primal hunger that had been suppressed by the laws of men for too long. He carried her to a bed of soft firs and fragrant pine boughs deep within the cave, where a natural thermal vent kept the air as warm as a summer afternoon. As he shed the last of his denim and leather, Colton looked less like a rancher and more like a force of nature. In the flickering shadows, his body was a map of hard work and scars, now softened by the worshipful touch of Elena's fingertips. She pulled him down onto her, her legs tangling with his, her skin a pale fire against his sun-darkened frame. The romance was no longer a whispered secret. It was a roar. Every touch was an exploration of their new, lawless reality. Colton's hands, once meant for breaking horses, were now infinitely tender as they mapped the curves of the woman who had stolen his soul. He moved with a slow, deliberate rhythm that matched the steady drip of water from the cave's stalactites, a pulse that felt as old as the mountain itself. Elena arched beneath him, her fingers digging into the muscles of his back, her soft cries lost in the vast silence of the high ridge. In this high-altitude haven, there were no sheriffs, no jealous ranch hands, and no fences. There was only the heat of their bodies and the realization that they were finally, irrevocably free. As dawn began to bleed purple and gold across the horizon, Colton held her close, his chin resting on the top of her head. They weren't just lovers hiding in the woods anymore. They were the architects of a new life built on the ruins of the old world. Winter had descended upon the Blackwood Range with a silent, crystalline fury. The obsidian ridge was encased in a fortress of ice, and the valley below was a distant, white blur. Inside the grotto, the thermal spring hissed, creating a veil of steam that kept the world of men at bay. Colton sat by the small, crackling fire he'd built from cedar roots, his skin bronzed by the flames, looking every bit the mountain king he had become. He was sharpening a bone knife when he heard it, the rhythmic crunch of snow crust. Not the light step of a deer, but the heavy, synchronized trudge of men in winter gear. "Colton," Elena whispered, emerging from the shadows of the cave. She was wrapped in the heavy wolf pelts they'd cured together, her amber eyes wide with a mixture of fear and ancient defiance. "I know," he said, rising to his full height. He didn't reach for his gun this time. He reached for a heavy iron pry bar he'd fashioned from a wagon axle. They don't know when to quit. They think a deed to the land means they own the soul of it. At the mouth of the cave, 3 figures appeared through the blizzard. It was the sheriff, Silas, his face now scarred from their last encounter, and a lawyer from the city, clutching a weather-worn satchel. They looked frozen, their breath coming in ragged, desperate gasps. "Colton," the sheriff hollered over the wind. "The Triple R is in foreclosure. The bank is taking the cattle, the house, everything. If you come back now and sign the papers, we can claim you were held against your will. We can save your legacy." Silas stepped forward, his eyes darting hungrily toward Elena. "Give us the girl, Colton. The town wants her gone. Give her up, and you get your life back." Colton walked to the very edge of the precipice, the wind whipping his dark hair. He looked down at his calloused hands, then back at Elena, who stood like a statue of grace amidst the chaos. He let out a low, dark laugh that was swallowed by the gale. "You called it a legacy?" Colton shouted back, his voice echoing off the frozen peaks. "A house made of wood that rots? Cattle that die in the cold? I have more life in one night in this cave than I had in 40 years in that valley." He stepped towards Silas, the iron bar heavy in his hand. The sheer presence of the man, the raw, untamed power he'd cultivated in the wild, made the search party stumble back. "The Triple R died the moment I saw her," Colton growled. "Go back to your fences and your ledgers. Tell them the rancher is dead. Tell them the mountain took him." With a roar of effort, Colton struck a massive, overhanging sheet of ice above the trail. The mountain groaned. A localized cascade of snow and frozen rock tumbled down, not enough to kill them, but enough to seal the narrow path to the obsidian ridge forever. The men scrambled back, fleeing toward the lower slopes as the trail vanished behind a wall of white. Silence returned to the ridge. Colton turned to Elena, his chest heaving, the fire of battle still in his eyes. She didn't say a word. She simply walked to him, unhooking the furs, her warmth meeting his in the freezing air. He lifted her, his arms like iron bands around her waist, and carried her back into the heart of the steam-filled grotto. There, amidst the shadows and the heat of the earth, they celebrated their final victory. The romance was no longer a secret. It was a sovereign nation. Every kiss was a seal on their new law, and every touch was a reminder that they had conquered the world by leaving it behind. As the blizzard roared outside, sealing them away in their private paradise, the rancher and his queen lay together in the glow of the embers, finally, truly at peace.